Good morning. Thank you all for joining us this Saturday morning. We're so excited to have an exciting lineup of panelists as part of the My Brother's Keeper Ohio Leadership Series in partnership with Senator Sherrod Brown's office, as well as the Ohio State University's Alumni Association. We're grateful for all of you to do this work. My name is Kyle Strickland. I'm the director of My Brother's Keeper Ohio and work at the Kirwan Institute for the Study of Race and Ethnicity, which works in partnership with the Senator's office on this excellent program and this work that we're doing. This is a pivotal moment, a pivotal time that we are living in. Obviously, the ongoing events over the past week and the past several weeks have been difficult in the midst of the pandemic that we're living in now and seeing the calls for racial justice. We couldn't have a more timely conversation today on the mental health toll on racism and microaggressions on our mental health and well-being. So we're going to have that discussion with those who've faced racism, navigating through their careers, but have also navigated different ways to serve as mentors and community leaders in their respective communities and are giving back by taking the time today to present and to participate. But first, before we jump into the panel, we have a message from Senator Sherrod Brown, who has been pivotal in making the My Brother's Keeper Ohio program strong and moving forward. So here we are with a message and keynote remarks from Senator Sherrod Brown.
I'm Sherrod Brown. It's an honor to serve you in the United States Senate, to serve Ohio and to serve this country. Thank you, especially Kirwan Institute, Kyle Strickland. Kyle's been working with us closely for so long. I really appreciate that. He's chair of My Brother's Keeper Ohio. Donnie Jones, Dr. Edward Barksdale, Daywin Frost, Dr. Charles Maudlin, and Derek McDowell. Thank you for making this work time after time after time. Most importantly, thank you to the students listening in today and watching. I know some of you are already involved with MBK. Others are joining an MBK event for the first time. For those of you just learning about My Brother's Keeper, I encourage you to get involved. Today, we'll give you an idea of all the doors that My Brother's Keeper can open for you. Our office has been working with leaders around the state since President Obama asked me one day, would you help us with this new thing we're doing nationally called My Brother's Keeper? Would you help us do this in Ohio to encourage and to encourage communities to invest in all students, particularly young men of color? We followed up with the president. We have more My Brother's Keeper initiatives in Ohio, I believe, than any other state but California. We started local MBK chapters in Cincinnati and Toledo, my hometown of Mansfield, Lorain County, Mahoning Valley, Stark County, Lincoln Heights outside Cincinnati, and Springfield. Kyle and all of us with MBK Ohio have listened to those chapters, have listened to what students say they want to get out of these programs. One of the things we've heard a lot about is health issues, especially mental health, especially during this difficult time. As men in particular, there can be so much pressure in society not to show weakness, show no vulnerability, brush mental health issues under the rug. We know this pandemic makes that worse for everyone. We have to end the stigma around taking care of all aspects of our health. Today's event, our partnership with Cincinnati Children's Hospital and with Josh really grow out of that feedback from you. So did several exciting other partnerships we launched this fall with the Cincinnati Reds, Cleveland Cavaliers, the Cincinnati Museum Center in Cincinnati. These kind of partnerships are really what MBK is all about. It's showing more Black and brown kids that there's a whole network of people who want to help you take care of yourselves and achieve your dreams, whatever they are. And that those dreams matter, and you never should have to limit them. When we say Black Lives Matter, this is part of that. It's Black health matters, Black careers matter, Black dreams matter.
Thank you so much. Senator Sherrod Brown him and his office have been pivotal to this work. We're so grateful for the work of the senator and making this happen. We have chapters, as he mentioned, all throughout the state of Ohio, 12 chapters and counting. We have chapters that are on the line now, so feel free to use the chat, the Q&A. We have plenty of our chapters, so feel free to shout out where you're from, where you're watching from. We know we have great work like the team in Lima, that has programs on Saturdays. The Bradfield Community Association is doing incredible work there in Lima, Ohio. So really excited about that. So today is part of our series of different events, leadership events that we're bringing in leaders from across the community who have connections to this work, who will talk about these different issues. And one of the big issues over the past year that we've been discussing has been with mental health, but also just the impacts on career and your own successes along the way. One of the things that we want to get across is the importance of My Brother's Keeper is about addressing the systemic barriers as well. So what are we thinking about when it comes to policy change, these other aspects as it relates to health and well-being? So today I'm going to invite our panelists to turn on their cameras now, and then we're going to jump into our moderated panel discussion. So first, we have panelist Dr. Edward Barksdale, who's a surgeon in chief at University Hospital. So raise your hand there. We have Damon Frost, who's the CIO of Procter & Gamble at Procter & Gamble. And then we have Dahani Jones, an entrepreneur, philanthropist, former NFL linebacker, including our very own Cincinnati Bengals here. We got some Cincinnati representation here. And then we have Derek McDowell, who's the founder of Youngstown Fleet. I want to wave Derek. His son has a tournament game that he's playing around the same time. So he's being able to do both multitask. So we really appreciate it. And congrats to your son as well. And then we have Dr. Charles Maudlin, who's a kidney transplant surgeon, urologist, and an incredible leader here in this community that we've been connected with. And so we're going to open it up. So again, as a reminder, everybody can mention in the Q&A if you have discussions. We're going to open it up with some discussion questions that we have to start with. And then we're going to open it up into Q&A from the audience. So first, we'll start with you, Dr. Barksdale, and everybody want you to think about this question. We'll go around, but we're living in a time of intense turmoil with the COVID-19 pandemic, deeply embedded social inequities, and continued instances we saw this past week of police violence and racial injustice. What can you share about how recent events and events of this past year with the deaths of George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and so many others, how has that impacted you, and what can you say?
Well, it has particularly impacted me in the sense that it has emboldened me in my environment and in my world to bring up the dirty four-letter word of race and its extension, racism. Those of us who are in this corporate world have often felt uncomfortable bringing this up. But these events have brought me to a point where I've been active in the process of identifying and challenging racism in the world that I work in, which is healthcare and in children's healthcare. And I've been calling out the organizational injustices, the structural policy injustices that exist within the environment, and the need to redistribute power. Because as Senator Brown said, this Black Lives Matter isn't just about life, it's about well-being and dreams. And we need to empower our young people and ourselves to dream and dream boldly.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Damon, how is this moment impacting you? How are you showing up in this moment?
This has been a very, actually, I agree 100% with Dr. Barksdale. It has caused me to be a lot more focused on making sure my voice is heard, as well as making sure I'm looking after the folks around me in corporate America. So I work for Procter & Gamble, and I'm one of the more senior African-American leaders in information technology. And this has caused me to really engage more strongly with leadership around making sure there's space for people who look like me, making sure they're protected and looked after, making sure they feel wanted and accepted, and they feel safe in the context of being able to be their true selves, as well as being able to show how this overall, all of these factors are impacting them.
It's powerful. Yeah, I think we're all trying to figure out the different ways and that we're navigating these different spaces. Dahani, tell us a little bit about, how you're showing up in this moment, how these events are impacting you.
Well, I think the most important piece is the platform of advocacy. I think Dr. Barksdale, just pointed it out quite clearly that those, much like myself and everybody on the panel who has had the opportunity to sit at the table has now had the opportunity to bring others to the table. I've fortunately enough was able to join a board of an aspiring business called Outside Media, and I sit as an independent board director. And I really wanted to join that organization because to go outside and to try new sports outside of the big three. I play football, right? But to try cycling and to try skiing and to try snowboarding, all these different sports, to go hiking. People never thought that African Americans should be there, but there's a whole world of African Americans that do that. And I wanted to make sure that everybody knew that they had an opportunity to get outside and go explore the world. And I think that sitting on that board welcomes the opportunity to bring other people to the table. And this past year has increased our ability and emboldened our voice, as Dr. Barksdale said, to bring more people and to be more of an advocate and to not be quiet, if you will. And I think that it's been trying, but at the same time, because so many people have reached out and they've recognized it too, the challenge of the conversation, albeit not easy, has happened more frequently.
Thank you. Derek, what are you thinking?
I think that much of us, many of us have had the range of emotions that go along with these tragic events. I mean, we've experienced the sadness, we've experienced the hurt, we've walked through our frustration and our anger. Many of us have just become tired. And, when you see those types of things from the bird's eye view position that we sit in as those who have an influence, whether that be in our personal lives or social networks or through our professional work, I think that this has impacted me to the degree of feeling the healthy weight of additional responsibility and stewardship of what's been given to me. I sit in a position that allows my voice to be heard more so than others. And so I feel that healthy weight and responsibility to ensure that when I have an opportunity to engage on a community level, invitations to speak, invitations to sit on panels like this, how we articulate in those moments and how we share this narrative with others matters. And so I would say it's impacted me to the degree that in the most polite way possible, in the most honoring degree as I can to articulate, all gloves are off when I have conversations now with organizations who believe that they're in positions of assistance when really they're just sort of coattailing previous successes. And I'm saying, hey, I come from a world where your last at bat doesn't matter. What are you doing now? And I can articulate that from a position of, as some said, a position of power in a sense that we've been given, that they'll listen and understand and take it in a way that it's been articulated well.
Yep. Wonderful. Yeah. I mean, you talk about that just perfectly there. What have you done lately? Right. And especially when it comes to these issues, it's so critical. Dr. Momlin, would love for you to share a little bit about how this moment is impacting you as well.
Yeah, thank you. I'm really proud to be part of this esteemed panel. Basically, looking at the COVID-19 pandemic, especially through the lens of being a physician and surgeon, and Dr. Barksdale can attest to this, we know that the Black community, because we are actually relatively rare, only 4% of all physicians in the United States are African American, and very few are African American male physicians and surgeons. Our country and actually the world is facing a new disease, a pandemic, that has never been seen before. 600,000 Americans actually have died from this pandemic, which disproportionately is afflicting people of color, especially African Americans. African Americans are developing, contracting, being hospitalized, and dying from COVID at rates 3 to 5 times the majority population. And as physicians of color, we actually have a responsibility that the Black community, I would say, holds us to as being accountable in terms of being the community's brother's keeper. We have a responsibility to be the watchdog, the protector of the community. And in the case of this COVID-19 pandemic, one of our major roles and responsibilities is to get re-energized and reinvigorated to stand up, speak out, and provide the Black community, all communities, but especially the Black community, with credible information about COVID-19, why the Black community is more susceptible to COVID-19, and ways in which we as individuals, our families, and our communities can mitigate against this COVID-19 pandemic. There's a lot of misinformation out there about the COVID-19 vaccines, for example. And again, it's our responsibility as Black physicians to stand up, no matter what effort it takes, to disseminate this appropriate information to the community. Because as physicians, the community, our patients actually expect us to guide them through these difficult times. They don't want to see us panicking. They see us as beacons of hope and strength. And in order to be seen and get the job done, we actually have to be knowledgeable about the facts, the science, and disseminate that information, that credible information to the community, so that the community can make appropriate decisions in terms of how to protect themselves, their families, and their communities.
Thank you so much. And thank you all so much for sharing. And I think that kind of ties into the next question, which is really, one, following the science, right? And looking at the health impacts and the health tolls. So, over the past year and honestly before then, but it certainly picked up after this past summer, Congress, as well as local communities across the country, have really started to take the steps to introduce resolutions declaring racism as a public health crisis. And it's followed a number of studies by academics and medical professionals about the harmful impact of racism on the mental and physical health on Black people and Black communities, and also being very clear about the systemic nature of racism and why that it is a public health crisis and the social determinant of health and all those details. So I would love for folks to kind of, based on your professional, and then we'll hand it over to Dr. Barksdale and Dr. Modlin on this one first, and then we'll also talk about personal experiences here. What does racism as a public health threat mean to you? And what do you think it is / will be the real life impact of these resolutions and increased awareness? We'll just kick it back to you, Dr. Modlin, if you want to take this, and we'll give her Dr. Barksdale.
Well, the director of the CDC actually recently proclaimed that racism is a public health crisis. Other organizations, the American Cancer Association, have also deemed this to be a public health crisis, and the National Medical Association. We as physicians, and especially Black physicians, we've known this for decades. This is nothing new. This is not any new news for us. I've been dismayed, however, in watching some of the TV commentators actually trying to push back on this proclamation that racism is a public health crisis. This is rooted in the pathophysiology that is occurring as a result of individuals experiencing being the victims of discrimination and racism. There is actually a physiologic response on the body. Actually, chronic stress causes our body to release a hormone, a substance called cortisol. Adrenaline, there's the hypothalamus in the brain, the pituitary. These structures, these organs in our bodies actually cause our adrenal glands that sit on the top of our kidneys to pump out this adrenaline, this cortisol, that can, over the long term, be very harmful to our brains, our hearts, our kidneys, our vascular system, cause high blood pressure, predispose us to diabetes and a plethora of other chronic conditions in terms of mental health disorders as well. So this is a real phenomenon. We have to understand that psychological stresses can be transformed and actually do transform into physiologic stresses that actually lower our lifespans. You look at the healthcare disparities that are disproportionately experienced by African-American populations. again, higher rates of kidney disease, diabetes, heart disease, cancers. A lot of these things can be attributable to chronic stresses. And these chronic stresses caused also by the social determinants of health, many resulting from the impact of discrimination and racism, contribute to lower life expectancies. You look at African-American life expectancies compared to our white counterparts. On average, we live about 5 to 8 years shorter life expectancy. Even though our average life expectancy in the United States is increasing, there's still that persistent gap, even between Black men and white men and Black women and white women. So this is a real phenomenon. It's something that it is important that we have these proclamations, but proclamations in and of themselves will not solve the problem, but it's a first great step.
No, thank you so much for that overview. And I think to that question, you know, proclamations in and of themselves will not solve the problem. Dr. Barksdale, how are you coming at this as these are, you know, these resolutions are coming forward, and what do you think about the impact or increased awareness of it?
Well, I think you want to look at who I am as a clinician. Dr. Maudlin is an adult clinician who has done an incredible job of helping to improve the community health. And when I look at what adult people do, and he talked about the roots, he takes care of the roots, the tree and its branches. I am a pediatric surgeon. I take care of the blossom on the trees. And as the soil is injured by racism, it affects the tree greatly. The length of life of the tree may be shorter, but the blossoms are less robust. And the blossoms form the seeds to the future. We know that violence and racism change the chemistry of the body, as he discussed. It's called the fight or flight system, or fright. So a bear comes in the room, your blood pressure goes up, you either run, you either try to fight the bear. But racism puts us in a position where we are in the fright state. We can't run, we can't fight, we can't hide. And that internally affects our blood pressure, but it also, not to be too technical, affects our epigenetics. It affects our genes. And so this collective trauma that we experience can go generation to generation. And so it is so important for us to impact not just the soil, not just the tree, but to look at the blossom, the children. That's what MBK does. And I'll end by saying, you know, we talk about this, that it takes a village to raise a family. But I would argue, who's raising the village? And so we need to think about fighting racism so that we can restore the village that enhances not just the tree, but those blossoms on the tree.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I would love others to share a little bit. It may not be from the same kind of perspective, but I mean, we are all navigating these different spaces in our communities. It affects our workplaces, and we know what people are even thinking about it. We know some people may not be aware of what racism as a public health crisis means. You know, what does it mean to you, and how are you getting a sense of it? And we'll let anybody, Damon, if you wanted to jump in for this one, and I would love to just kind of go around.
Yeah, I think, you know, one of the things that it does help is just an acknowledgement that, you know, of things that we all know and that we're feeling, right? So we know this, we know the impact of racism on our health, on our well-being, our ability to be successful. And I think having it declared helps to create space for the conversation, for understanding, right? Because one of the things I think it does, it gives a different view of how you talk about racism, right? To a lot of people, racism is this thing that, yes, it's bad, and, you know, you shouldn't judge people based on the color of their skin. But I think this actually, having this declared as a health crisis, creates a different level of conversation around the other impacts of racism, how it impacts people physically, how it impacts communities. And I think that is where we can start education with people who are willing to have those conversations in a deeper way. I mean, I've spent a lot of time, probably over the last 2 years, listening to a lot of podcasts or NPR, just learning about the history of policing, the history of, I mean, racism as a mental health issue is, is something that doesn't come naturally to you as something that is a thing, but I've actually learned, I heard a lot about what the doctors were speaking of based on some research that I've done. And so I think this clears space for us to have deeper conversations and people can understand the underlying effects of racism. And this happens in a corporate, it can happen in a corporate setting, right? I mean, I think we have a lot of people in this world who want to do good things. They think they're good people. And they think, hey, if we denounce racism, that's kind of it. And they really need to understand all the underlying impacts so that they can actually make more systemic changes that fuel racism versus just denouncing racism.
Yeah, it's powerful. I think a lot of people, they see racism as maybe an individual, prejudice or, those individual acts and don't see the systemic nature of it. Dahani, tell us a little bit about, kind of how this is showing up kind of in your world and hearing about these different ways and views around racism as a public health crisis.
Well, one thing I really like, I love analogies. So I really love the analogy of the roots and the branches and the tree and the blossom. And just to continue down that path, when a tree, blooms, right, then there's the seeds that fall into the ground and then new trees blossom as a result of it. And I think it's important for us to understand that there are, and there have been, and there is a network, much like the aspen tree is like the greatest organism in the entire world. A lot of people don't even know that. It is the largest living organism. And I think that within the African-American community, there are these amazing trees that have blossomed as a result of that same very cultivation, right? Where we've learned to deal with the stress of racism, where we learn to sort of deal with the fight or flight, and our cortisol levels have come to a place of which we can sort of achieve that balance. And for me, that has been as an athlete, as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, right? I have surrounded myself with those that have helped cultivate my branches and my tree so that I can be a representation of communities and of people, so that when those look around and say, okay, well, I can't get through this, you can point to others. And I think it's important, as the young people are sitting there listening, understand that you are a positive advocate of a world that we know is challenged, but those that are surrounding and sitting with you right now are helping cultivate those roots and those branches so you too can be successful. And I think that's an important component to realize, like, not everybody is hanging their head, but lifting it up. I love that Instagram picture of the guy playing basketball and I think the ball got stolen and his friend comes by and picks his head up. That's what we're all doing right now. We're picking your head up. We know that it's turbulent. We know that it's challenging, but there are people out there, and I can speak to the sports world, right? I can talk to the many different players that I've worked with over the long term, both black and white, right? You can look to the Players Coalition and Anquan Bolden and so many other people that are speaking out and speaking up about the advocacy of African Americans in this time of challenge. We're all lifting each other's heads up, so it's important to understand where you fit and understand that you have good water on your roots, and you too are a part of this village raising this network of trees.
Powerful. That's powerful. Derek, how is this showing up kind of in your community? Obviously, everything that's going down just nationally, but even locally, how's this showing up for you?
We've seen just recently our local city council declare, racism as a public health crisis. Reading articles on a national level with colleges like Tougaloo partnering with local health systems and pulling in grants for future students to begin studying the effects of racism in our society, and tons of data out there around its effects. But one thing that was earlier said, I believe by Damon, was this acknowledgement, the piece of acknowledgement for our community, because a Youngstown is very much like what a Dr. King would say, is that there's this negative piece, which is this absence of tension. And we like to believe that there is, the national narrative, and then there's the Youngstown who doesn't suffer from that same illness. And yet, when we really start diving deep into the root system of our community, we acknowledge that we're so, to a degree, because of the stresses of these effects, that we've abstained, we've become desensitized, and quite honestly, absolved ourselves of doing much of the work. But when you put it on paper, when you acknowledge it, right? This is that moment, and I'm a metaphorical dude, but I'm a little bit lower level than some of the doctors. This is that moment in a relationship where you acknowledge like, hey, I thought it was me, but it's really been you, right? Because like oftentimes we turn to ourselves internally and we spend a lot of time stressing the anxiety of believing that it's us when it's really been you. And we knew it all along, and we were going half crazy trying to articulate that moment where we believed, hey, it's got to be something with me, but really, 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 really getting deep down into the fact that it's been the water system, it's been the soil that's been impacting us. And so having that acknowledgement does a lot, in my personal opinion, not my medical or professional opinion, for the psyche of our community that says, wow, we can now begin to at least ease ourselves of this pain of saying that it's always been us and not some external force impacting us. And so that's important in our community. And I point that out often. What I want to see go beyond these declarations is much like we talk about W.E.B. Du Bois and Souls of Black Folk, where we have always looked to something to rescue us, and that something comes, right? But it's still not enough. We've got to make sure we're not placing all of our eggs in this basket, but we know what legislation can do. I'm thankful for folks like Senator Sherrod Brown, Michelle Lepore Hagan, who's going on to the next level, not just on a local level with this legislation, but we have to be careful not to allow this legislation to make us become socially lazy in the work that needs done. This legislation opens up the door for opportunity to do the legwork that they can't ignore anymore.
Wow. Well, you guys are phenomenal. You guys make my job easy, man. This is fantastic. Well, I mean, I think that sums it up so well. And I think especially the work we do with My Brother's Keeper and the My Brother's Keeper initiative, we try to talk consistently about the network that we have here. But then also, we listen to the lived experiences of people. And for too long, people have been blamed for their circumstances, right? There's this idea of blaming people because of their individual failures or flaws or deficits. And so you might, I know we've all probably have heard it in some instances of, well, you were successful, so why can't other people be successful, without any sort of acknowledgement about the types of barriers that even you faced along the way. And just because you're successful doesn't mean we shouldn't provide the more opportunities for everybody else. And so, to that point, I want to kind of go around here with this question. As a Black man who has achieved success, what can you share about your journey? We have a lot of people listening in on this call. We actually have some of our chapter leaders that are actually watching in, and they've got students surrounded kind of watching as part of their programming. So there's a lot of young men of color on this call who are listening. What can you share a little bit about your journey? And then also we got to be honest here. How has racism impacted you or attempted to serve as an obstacle in accomplishing some of your life goals, either, past or present? And we'll start with Dr. Modlin.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to make sure that your audience recognizes how successful of a physician there is on this panel, Dr. Edward Barksdale. Not only is he a pediatric surgeon, becoming a pediatric surgeon is one of the most difficult accomplishments in the area of medicine to achieve. And especially becoming a Black pediatric surgeon, and especially on top of that, becoming the chair of a surgical department. There's only a handful of Black surgical department directors, I would say, in the entire nation. So thank you, Dr. Barksdale, for what you do in terms of your interventions to help raise the next generation. It's interesting, part of our training as we go through the medical professions, and I'm sure even the athletes will attest to this, we never actually feel that we've achieved success. Others will maybe say that we are successful, but in our own minds, we never have completely achieved the success that we think that we should achieve. I mean, the job is never done. I actually have learned a lot of things throughout my life. I've made a lot of mistakes. I continue to learn. I have a picture of my father here in the background. His name was Charles Modlin Sr. He passed away in 2010. He actually holds 4 gold records for the National Senior Games Association in track and field for men over the age of 80. I actually have some of his gold medals here that I keep around to inspire me. He didn't have the opportunity to finish high school. When he was in 11th grade, he had to drop out of high school. He was in good academic standings, but he had to enter World War II in the Navy to send money back to help his family. He never had the opportunities that I actually was afforded due to his sacrifices. My mother, Grace Modlin, she passed away 2003 from severe diabetes and kidney failure. She was the first ever Black school teacher in the history of Henry County, Indiana, which is a county near Indianapolis. So my successes were predicated upon the sacrifices of my parents and individuals who came before me. My grandmother, Clara Hampton, she lived to be 103 years old. So I'm saying to the students out there, it's important to have people that you look up to. Remember your roots, remember from whence you came, give back to the community, no matter how successful you are. I actually have a book coming out pretty soon. It's entitled, "It Isn't Difficult to Do It If You Know How to Do It." It's based on the fact that if you learn from others, take lessons from the mistakes and the success tips that others can give you, your journey is going to be that much easier. We can't make the road to success. We can't relieve all of the obstacles that you're going to face, but people like Dr. Barksdale and others can actually offer you and give you guidance in terms of how to make your journey a little bit easier, like people who came before us helped make our journey easier. One last thing I wanted to say, we're talking about racism, and Kyle, you brought up the word microaggression. And that's something that not all of the students or your audience is going to necessarily understand what means. And I wrote down the definition. Microaggression is a term used for brief and commonplace daily verbal, behavioral, or environmental indignities, whether intentional or unintentional, that communicate hostile, derogatory, or negative attitudes towards stigmatized or culturally marginalized group. So it's not just overt racism that is actually causing a lot of distress and increased levels of circulating hormones that affect our bodies physically and mentally. It's a lot of these microaggressions that oftentimes we may not even realize that we are being the victim of. And the way in which we have to develop coping mechanisms that are going to be healthy, because there are unhealthy coping mechanisms that we may turn to, substance abuse, smoking, that actually can affect our overall ability to achieve the successes in life that we wish to achieve.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing and for sharing your family's journey and all those along the way. Dr. Barksdale, tell us a little bit about kind of your experiences along the way as well.
Kind of hard to follow comments from Dr. Modlin. I would like to thank him for the shout out. We have very similar backgrounds. My mother was a seamstress in a sock factory. She never graduated high school. My father was a glorified postman. He never graduated college. I was blessed. As you know, I was fortunate to attend great schools. But when I think of myself, forgive the phone ringing, when I think of myself, I always envision myself as a turtle sitting on a lamppost. And if you can imagine a turtle sitting on a lamppost, what strikes you is that he didn't get there on his own. And I didn't get here on my own. If you saw my house, you would say, and you saw my neighborhood, you would say, there's nothing that is good that's gonna come out of that. But I grew up in a place called Lynchburg, Virginia, three blocks in one direction, 6 blocks in another, African-American community. I knew everyone knew me. And people might call that community, but my grandmother called that common unity. And so a part of the progress for me is that I have hoped to build community or tribe that I can be for and they can be for me. And that is a piece of advice that I would offer to everyone. None of us, although we try to be self-reliant, is that strong that we can do it on its own. If I might just add a little 30 seconds to this, and I think Dr. Modlin and others on the path would understand this, as African-American men who have been blessed to achieve, who've been able to climb the mountain, the air gets thin the closer you get to the top. And with all respect to those of our brothers who have died because they can't breathe, in many ways, for me as a professional, in the environments that I've been in leadership, I've had difficulty breathing. It can be suffocating because people are not always comfortable with African-American men or women being on top. So I close by saying, it is our brotherhood, it is our community, it is our common unity, our posse, our peeps that provide us strength for the journey. And we breathe oxygen into each other when the outside world may be suffocating us.
About the community.
Yeah.
Dhani, tell us a little bit about
Man.
your experiences. Yeah, you got some more analogies for us.
Man, well, I'll throw one out there. I love the analogy of the turtle on top of a lamppost. I feel like I'm a billy goat on the side of a mountain. I'm being serious. I see myself as this like this weathered goat that's sitting on top of this really, really small rock, right? On the pitch of a mountain that's about 75-degree angle. And if anybody's ever seen a billy goat, they can climb up anything, right? That's where I feel like I am, because I've had to fight, I've had to work, and at the same time, I've had to balance. And I think that you realize through your experiences that racism can come from any different direction and try to knock you off your feet. And we also have to recognize within us, we have a responsibility to ourselves in terms of how we react. None of us here have not encountered racism, but all of us here have handled it in a way that it still has allowed us to achieve our goals. I'd imagine Dr. Barksdale, Dr. Modlin, Derek, and Damon, Kyle, so many times someone might have said something to you, and if you would have chosen to the right, you would not be here today, because if you chose to the left, you've decided to be successful and not allow that to affect you, right? Somebody is trying to knock you off the lamppost, knock you off the rock. I grew up in Maryland, and I remember so many different times when people tried to knock me off my game. Thank goodness I had the world of football. My mother, she was a physician. She was one of the first African-American anesthesiologists in the U.S. Military and the Navy. And so many different times she just told me to sort of internalize it and process it in a way that I could utilize that kind of like, you just receive the light, right? Energy, and you just sort of redirect it in a different direction, right? And she taught me how to do that. My parents were really good at teaching me how to sort of meditate within sort of my own anger. And I think that's one of the things that African-American males, we're not taught to be able to do. We take that and we express it through our words and through our actions. And so we like to fight, right? That's a part of who we are. But if we can internalize that and meditate on it and allow it to sort of disperse itself in a manner that allows us to be more intense and focused on our work, that allows us to achieve the great goals that so many people on this panel have been able to do, we can do many things. And so, the world of football, a lot of people think it's not racist. Well, I think that you guys have been able to determine over the last couple of years that it is very racist, right? And so just because you have an opportunity to play the game doesn't mean you have an opportunity to stay within the game. And then even translating outside the game, nobody wants you to do anything outside of the world of football because you've already been given something. And so to be able to take that and slingshot it and to do stuff in the media, like I fortunately have been able to do, and follow the likes of people like Michael Strahan, who's a good friend of mine. I really rode his coattails and asked him the important questions so that I would not make the same mistakes that he might have made or others that might have made them before him. But didn't mean that racism didn't come into the equation or the conversation, I can point to many of different discussions that I've had where I've been challenged in that situation, but just in the same way that I didn't want them to knock me off my feet in the world of sports, I couldn't let them knock me off my feet in the world of media, and same thing in the world of business, right? And I think, I'll leave it at this, you have to decide, right, what to do with that energy that you absorb that Dr. Maudlin is talking about. You have to decide whether you want to be a fighter, you want to stand in the front of the line, whether you want to be a builder, and you want to, create something or be a position of influence in companies, or you want to sit in the back room. I prefer, as I've learned along the way, that we each have that same responsibility. We have to choose which one we want to be, and they each come with their own said, consequences. And I've preferred the place of being in the back room, having conversations. And if someone says something to me that I deem as racist, instead of lashing out, instead of walking away and going to build something, I sit down and talk with them. And so the balance comes at sitting on the side of the mountain and welcoming other people to balance right alongside with me so that we can have a discussion and provide an open forum so that we can all learn. And so racism has affected me throughout my entire career and still affects me to this day, but I refuse to let it knock me off my feet. And I only choose to allow the energy to sort of give me fuel to do more, because there are generations to come behind us that will learn from and that will desire to watch what we do so that we can all move forward and do more together.
Wow. Hey, you guys are crushing it. But it's so powerful. So I hope folks are taking some notes, and as well as with the analogies. We got some good analogies as well. Damon, tell us a little bit about kind of how racism has impacted you over your career.
So first, I don't appreciate you making me follow all of these wonderful stories and examples.
Exactly, right. I'll pass it over to you. Right?
I should have volunteered to go first.
Yeah.
But I'll try. So I am a Cincinnati native, born and raised. I graduated from Walnut Hills, and I had an experience early in my high school career that kind of taught me, it taught me a lesson about how I was going to be viewed and treated, and then how I needed to react to that, much to what Dahani was poking at. So there was I'm an IT guy, right? So I was into computer engineering. I started studying that stuff like early in high school, and University of Cincinnati had a program in their college engineering department where they had high school students of color to come down, and after school, you would do projects with the different professors. Okay. So me and a friend of mine, we were part of this program. So after school, we would go down to UC. And then, we were really excited. He was doing robotics. I was doing computer engineering. And so was with my professor the first week, learning all kinds of stuff, feeling like it was going great. And then, at the beginning of the next week, I got a call, right? And basically, the program called and said, hey, look, your professor doesn't want to continue with you. And I was like, why? Like, what, I felt like the week was good. I was learning stuff, we were getting along great. And they told me that he was intimidated by me. Okay. Now, you can't see on this screen, right? But I'm 6'3", about 285-ish. But I was 6'3" then, but I wasn't 285, obviously. I was probably like 185 or less. But it was, so I was taken aback, right? Because I'm also an extrovert. I'm very happy. I'm very friendly, right? So it's not like, we weren't engaging. And so, the good news was I was able to get work with the professor that was working with my friend, and I did a project and all, so I learned stuff. What I learned from that situation, though, was I needed to be acutely aware of how people perceive me in order for me to be able to do things that I wanted to do. And so I have, for better or for worse, that has been kind of baked into how I operate since then, right? So like I said, I'm an extrovert. I'm very friendly, but I also, look, I work at Procter & Gamble. I love that company, great company. However, a 6'3", 250 Black dude walking into a room, right? All of their biases and perceptions come out, right, around how they view Black people or, their racist tendencies or whatever. So my job is always to make sure that they know that I am very friendly and I'm very approachable. And and I do that. Part of it is my personality, but part of it is so that I don't create unnecessary barriers for me to be able to be successful. I can't afford, and afford meaning literally afford, for these folks to be afraid of me. I can't afford it because I need to work. I can't afford it because I want to progress through the company. I want to be successful. I need to get things done. I need to be able to get projects done. I can't afford it because I need for the administrators at the school to be able to talk to me about my kids, right? My kids go to Indian Hill, and, so for those who are in the Cincinnati area, that's like it's a very, 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 it's a great school district, but it's also very white. And I can't afford for those administrators to be afraid of me, because I need them to be able, first of all, I need them to focus on my kids and getting the education and being supportive. I need them to partner with me to make sure that we're doing the best for my kids. So that experience in high school has really informed how I need to operate in the world. And I'm not talking about I changed, like, hey, I'm not being my full me, but I took that energy, right, and figured out how to create something out of it that helps me be more successful. And it also, me being approachable and friendly and being very aware of how people perceive me when they see me and they don't hear me, also allows me to have conversations with people who may not be willing to have those conversations with other people. So if I'm approachable, I'm Damon, and they're Damon that they love, I can also have those conversations about, hey, look, you know what? Hey, this racism thing is a thing, and here's the data, right? And talk to me about why you don't think it's a thing, and let's have the discussion. Much to what Dhani was saying, versus them feeling like and again, this is feeling. They're feeling like they can't talk. They all of their perceptions rushing into their mind when they see me, and so that's so my advice, my overarching advice would be, number one. One of the things that worked very well for me when I was coming through high school is I was part of the En-ROSE program. So I'm an En-ROSE alum. And so my advice to the students on this call would be to find programs that interest you, that will allow you to grow and create spaces for you to be able to learn how to operate in this world. Because you will have to operate in this world, and there'll be things that you will need to be factoring into how you behave, how you interact, in order for you to be successful. Find the programs, find the organizations, find the mentors, because it doesn't have to be an organization, it can be a person, that you can develop relationships that will help you, that will teach you, that will show you, like this, Dhani was saying, like, hey, I made these 4 mistakes. You don't need to make these mistakes. These are the things that you should do so that you don't have to endure the things that I've done. Find those things that will help you grow safely. Because when you get out there in the world, right, there will be times where you won't be able to grow safely. And you need to be able to factor those things into how you operate.
Wow. Thank you for that. And Derek, a couple words from you, and then we'll because this is such a good panel, we are literally almost at time. It's crazy that we're almost at time, but I want to hear from you, Derek, just specifically on this question about the racism that you faced, and then we're going to give everybody a time to just briefly close. But first, Derek, I just want to hear from you about some of the obstacles you faced along the way.
Straight setup, straight set me up, right?
I did, man. Don't worry,
Damon thought he had
another close.
Task, right?
Exactly.
Right. So I'll be brief as I can, but what I'd love to do is just sort of recap some of the things that I heard and really articulate my life through that quick recap. And so you hear Dr. Maudlin talk about the microaggressions. I'm 6'3" as well, and I've been about 215. And so you hear from the little old ladies in the mall that would put their finger directly in your face and tell you that you must have played basketball. The microaggressions of taking my sons, who are 6 foot tall, to a dentist appointment, treating them to something afterwards, walking into a restaurant and having a group of older gentlemen say to you, as soon as you walk in, there goes the basketball team, right? So moving to what Dhani talks about is that choice A, choice B, and how we respond to those microaggressions. I've learned and adapted to turn to those men in that coffee house and say, no, this is the science team, right? Already assuming what me and my children can be and can achieve are those microaggressions we talk about. Dr. Maudlin talks about, the effects of that, but I believe Dr. Barksdale spoke to this feeling that I gathered over a long period of time, a feeling like, I had to make my own way in this world and that there was no one there to help me. I remember a time where I literally sat down and asked, do I have a hero? And couldn't identify with anyone in the world around me or in my direct sphere that I could point to as a hero. The issue was that I've been sold this idea of what a hero should look like, and thereby couldn't find anyone. I thought I did it all by myself until I stopped. And I realized that my heroes were my mother and my brothers. And what I had to do was redefine what a hero was, because again, I didn't want to go through life thinking I got myself everywhere. I was the turtle on the lamppost or the billy goat on the mountain who got himself there. What really got me there, because of this racism and the impacts of it, right, that really had to reshape my definition of a hero, was one who took the blow, right? You imagine how a Superman jumps in front of a train and leans in and takes that impact. When I redefined what a hero is, I recognized that my mom took those blows. My brothers who dropped out of school, who stole, just like a Michael Brown from a convenience store, they brought home dinner every night. They took the impact and the blows for me to be able to stand here and claim I didn't have a hero until I had to redefine that. Dhani talked about something, again, that choice A, choice B. Really, let's be honest, when you do choose that route that keeps you on your path of success, how many of us have heard the word sellout, right? That higher ground that a Michelle Obama talks about, when they go low, we go high, it also results in this accusation of a sellout. I didn't learn until my wife began studying language as an English as a second language teacher, the importance of being able to code switch, because I grew up in the hood. And in the hood, you don't code switch, right? But when I get on these news interviews and these panel discussions and you're able to articulate, you're accused of being a sellout. I'm never Black enough for Black people, and I could never be white enough for white people, right? And so I must be a sellout. I've been accused as a sellout right in my own small business by my own people who, because I didn't articulate like them. And so, when we talk about these things, essentially what it is heavy is the head that wears the crown, because you're trapped in some moments between this dichotomy of who to be. So my advice to young people, what I had to recognize at the end of the day was, to thine own self be true. If I can go through this life not allowing others to tell me who I'm supposed to be, to tell me what I'm supposed to do, but to myself be true to what I've been called to do in my own home, in my own community, in my own dreams, and in my own efforts, then you become that person who can be resolved and resilient to not let anyone stand in your way or anything. I was listening to some commentary from Stacey Abrams, and she talked about what her parents said to her. And it was this, and I'll leave with that. She said her parents told her that because you not having much is not an excuse for not doing much, right? Not having anything is no excuse for doing nothing. And so we've been through much and we've not been given much. We talk about the resources of our community, but it's no excuse not to do much.
Wow. Wow. I mean, you guys are powerful on a Saturday morning. This is incredible. This is absolutely incredible. I'm going to give everybody just, 20, 30 seconds to just give some closing remarks. I wish I could give you longer time. I also give you 20, 30 seconds, knowing that people sometimes go slightly over, and that's truly okay. But I want to make sure we're cognizant of everybody's time. We know we did 10 to 11, but you guys have said such powerful words. I want to have you close it out as well. So we're just going to go in the same order. So Dr. Mondlin, I want you to 30 words, kind of 30 seconds to close us out, and just final thoughts. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I just want to say there's been a lot said today for the young people to digest, and I want to just make sure the young people understand we're not trying to scare you or intimidate you against trying to strive for success. We're here as a source of inspiration. You know, if we can achieve success, we know that you have the ability also. We're here as a resource to help mentor you, coach you, and guide you. In the interest of time, I hope the students will take some notes here. I have recommendations for two books that I would like the students to get, read, and digest. There's a great Cleveland author named George Fraser. There's a book called Race for Success, and another one of his books called Success Runs in Our Race. I would like to have you students get those books and read those and absorb the information within those books. It's a guideline whereby you can achieve success. The other thing I want to leave you with is I want you to write down the term John Henry or John Henryism. This describes the phenomenon whereby those who are trying to achieve success, people of color, Black people, a lot of times we have to endure and cope with great levels of stress on a daily basis to climb the success ladder. And as a result, in many situations, it affects our health outcomes. And Dhani actually mentioned something very profound. He mentioned the word balance. In achieving your success goals, you have to strike a balance between the fight or flight syndrome in terms of how you cope and how you deal with these daily stresses. So I want you to look up those books. I want you to read about John Henryism and understand how you can better develop more healthy coping mechanisms on your success journey.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Marlin. Dr. Barksdale.
I just want to say thank you, Kyle, for organizing this. I feel very selfish participating in this and humbled. I believe that I have gotten more from this than I've given. And my mother and father both said, give more than you take. So thank you. I'd like to speak to the students directly and just say this. There's a quote from a book that says that the world breaks everyone, but afterwards, many are stronger in the broken places. And that's what we hope to do, is that all of us have been broken, but it is our community, our friends, it is our network that comes together that heals those breaks with the type of golden glue that makes us even stronger and better as a result of that. And so I hope that we can be globally a part of MBK's efforts to make you stronger in the broken places. Thank you.
Well, powerful. Dhani.
I too want to say thank you for having me. I've learned quite a bit, and it's an honor to be on a panel with all Black men. I want to acknowledge that, and all of the challenges that we have all endured in this broken world, as we've all had to rebuild ourselves over and over. And the way that we rebuild ourselves is by virtue of energy. And sometimes it's negative energy. Hopefully it's all positive energy, but you choose to take a bite and absorb the energy that's coming into your body and do something with it. And I'd invite all of those that are participating today to think about how you want to consume that energy and what you want to do with it. Sit with yourself at least once a week and decide where you want to be. We all spend time on social media and television and conversations with others, but oftentimes we don't spend those moments with ourselves. And I think it's important to map out, to think about, and to design. And then you already know where you're going. Now, any number of different times that breeze of opportunity can come from a different direction, and you can get knocked off that highway that you so desire to be on, but at least you know the overall direction that you wish to travel. So I'd invite everybody that is listening to sit with yourself, because I think as Black males, so many times we're told we're not going to be here that long. So we don't plan ahead. I'm going to be here a long time. And so I'm going to plan for that future ahead. That mountain that I climb, the balance that we establish, and the energy that we derive, regardless if it's positive or negative, I'm going to take it, I'm going to internalize it, I'm going to apply it. And I wish for all of us to apply our energy in the direction of which our aspirations are going to take us. And so I would just hope that everybody listening would just take those moments in life, because everybody sitting here has been in the same position that you are, and they have endured and have encountered the same discussions and challenges, and have pushed against those that are trying to knock them down. And we all have still yet achieved, and so can you.
Thank you. Thank you. Damon?
Yep. So look, first, Kyle, and thank you for allowing me to be part of this panel, this esteemed panel. I've learned a lot as well. To the students, I just have a few pieces of advice. Number one, you're looking at a very esteemed, successful panel of Black men who were where you are. So know that you can achieve that thing you want to do. So you should really, so that's number one. Second, when you're feeling like you are alone, find your tribe. Sometimes your tribe is in the school. Sometimes your tribe is in social organizations, whether or not it's, again, I talked about Inroads, and actually, honestly, when I joined Inroads, that program, I found my tribe. They were able to, it was a group of people, like-minded individuals who were trying to achieve similar things to what I was trying to achieve or learn or figure it out. And actually, all of those people that I was in Inroads with are all my friends today, and all very successful in their own right. So when you're feeling like you're alone or you can't make it or nobody believes in you, look for spaces, organizations, mentors that are like-minded, that can help encourage you and develop you. Because that will be important now. It will also be important in the future. You surround yourself with people that are encouraging you and developing you versus bringing you down.
Thank you so much. Derek, close us out briefly.
Well, as I stated earlier, I may not be the guy on the panel with the societal, accolades of others, but I'm thankful to be on a panel with such esteemed panelists who have climbed those mountains and show us the best of what we can be. But I will say, in my own right, I'm unapologetically me. I don't have a college degree. I don't have what many others would, deem in society as the credibility to stand on a panel like this. But what I found, and the advice I'd love to give to those in attendance is, when you know who you are, there's this bar in the Jay-Z song that I love. He says, "I'm clear about why I'm here. How about you?" And I lean into that because I believe that in order to operate in a world that so ever wants to change us, if you're clear about why you're here, you operate in such a different manner in this life. I've been to the bottom, those Drake songs started from the bottom. I've been there. And so the fear, my wife will say, do it afraid. That those are types of things that we need to understand, that when a world seeks to try and silence you out of fear, when you understand that I know who I am and I've been to the bottom and you can't scare me on my way to where I'm headed, self-awareness is something that I would love to share with others, because I believe that anything else is fake. We're not giving our real selves to this common unity, to the community. And if we can't give our real selves to this world, then we go through this life being someone else. So unapologetic about who you are is what I'd love for people to gather from these moments.
Wow. Well, thank you all. Dr. Mondlin, Dr. Barksdale, Dahani, Derek, Damon, this has been an incredible panel. We're so grateful. And for all of you who tuned in, we're grateful for you tuning in. This session will be recorded, and so we'll be sharing that with everybody after this session, as well as on our social media channels as well. So make sure everybody gets a copy of this session. But most importantly, for those of you, those chapters that are at a group right now and are with your young people, want you to all kind of have a debrief conversation with students. And then if you have any follow-up questions, we'll make sure to get those questions over to our panelists here, and we'll be in touch. And so, look, at the end of the day, there's a lot going on in the world, a lot going on in this country, in this state, a lot of challenges that we're facing. And despite it all, in spite of it all, when there are those moments where you might be cynical and feeling down, there are a network of people along the way that are fighting for you and are rooting for you, rooting for your success in a world that sometimes does everything it can to diminish it. And so today, we're just grateful for our panelists to be a part of this discussion. We're grateful for all of you engaged in the community. We will have future events like this, and hopefully in the future, we will be in person, but we'll have future events like this. Again, My Brother's Keeper initiative as part of the Obama Foundation, the My Brother's Keeper Alliance, and we lead the statewide network in partnership with the Kirwan Institute and Senator Sherrod Brown's office. And today's event was brought to you in partnership with the Ohio State University Alumni Association. But with that, I just want to thank you all for attending today. And this was a fantastic session. And thanks so much to our panelists, and we'll be in touch. All right, take care, everybody. Thank you.
So Kyle?
Yep.
I'm even more excited about getting this picture with all these phenomenal brothers that I've been on the panel with. I'm going to frame this. I hope I can get some channeled energy after this.
All right, everybody.
Yeah.
You want to smile for the camera?
Okay, we got it.
Love it. Oh, look, see, Ohio State's got us covered. Well, hey, you guys, thank you so much. This was an absolute pleasure. Thanks, Aaliyah, for jumping on. This was excellent. This is fantastic. We probably can stop the recording now, but we'll close here in a minute.